Welcome back. Let's get into our panel discussion for this evening. Tonight, we are asking you, what do you make of suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner for Crime Detection Shadrack Sibiya's testimony at the Madlanga Commission? You can send us your views on WhatsApp to 072-110-5584. Give us a call on 010-594-6010. We are joined now by Unisa criminologist, Professor Mpho Matlala, as well as criminal law expert Allis. Gentlemen, a very good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time and for joining us today. Let's start with you, Ian. Maybe let's pose the question to you as to what you made of the testimony given by General Sibiya today.
Thank you, Katlego. Good evening to the viewers. What I found particularly, I'm not necessarily surprising, but what I gathered more from the testimony that was given is the level of aggression expressed by Sabia in his testimony. Basically, instead of putting anybody's mind at ease as far as the corruption, especially in light of what he's facing and the various charges that he's facing, he didn't exactly come across as exculpatory. He didn't really look that he was going ahead and bringing out his best side. And that came across as quite surprising in this. He came across as very aggressive, quite evasive in what he was in actual fact saying, and basically almost pushing the blame and pointing fingers at everybody else except himself, despite all of the, on the face value, the evidence that is actually pointing against him and his involvement. So he didn't show a lot that actually helped him with regards to his testimony, but rather just the finger pointing and blaming of others who may be involved, and just pretty much blaming everybody else for what had actually happened and pointing fingers at Mkhwanazi with his revelations. So it came across more that he was trying to, if one could say, cover himself, but not doing so in a particularly favorable way.
Prof, I mean, Ian is saying aggression and evasiveness is what he picked up from this testimony. You would think that when General Sibiya had already appeared before the ad hoc committee, he would come across as a more polished and clearer witness at this Madlanga Commission.
I couldn't agree more, Katlego. But the difference between the ad hoc committee and Madlanga is that it would appear that General Sibiya did his homework, and indeed he came back more aggressively, and in fact he was attempting to punch sort of holes in the evidence of General Mkhwanazi. And, you know, he talked about his reinstatement at SAPS and his subsequent promotion, how it was regularly done, and cross-referenced that with the promotion of General Mkhwanazi without meeting the requirement of 2 years within a particular rank. Even if he has a case in that regard, I still think the appointment of General Mkhwanazi to the position of acting national commissioner in 2011 or thereabout would have still been justified in terms of the SAPS regulations. I mean, it's the prerogative of the president. The president, for all we know, may have taken somebody who is at the rank of constable and made that person acting national commissioner, because that's an administrative position. And of course, in his pushback, he further, all right, he couldn't do much about the competency at the city of Joburg for the group forensic investigative services, but he was at pains to try and prove that the technology he purchased was not spying technology, but rather forensic databases and some detection technologies that would detect spying technology. But that was him really pushing back and also starting with his career path, which indeed I must agree is powerful. But I get a sense that on this one, how it started, we are still having the infighting that is brewing and the division and the factionalism that is going on within the SAPS senior management echelons.
Ian, I mean, if we talk about that infighting and looking at the charges that Sibiya has against him in terms of serious misconduct relating to the removal of that 121 case dockets, and him saying that, and this also being put to overreach, as well as him acting without Masemola's approval. Him coming in and saying that he acted on Masemola's approval as well as knowledge in most of what he does, based on the legal frameworks, especially those that would govern SAPS, how valid are his arguments with regards to the authority of removing these dockets?
I think when one actually looks at the removal of the documents and the dockets and his involvement in those major 121 odd dockets, especially relating to the political killings task force, the one thing that comes across is that he was serving two masters, and that's the unfortunate aspect that comes across in both his testimony, both at the ad hoc committee as well as at the Madlanga Commission today. Is he's saying in one fell swoop, yes, he was doing so under the approval of Masemola, but at the same time it's very hard to believe that he was acting together in the best interest of the public, if one could say, with his involvement to the extent and all 121 of those dockets, him being involved with personally and going through and ultimately being the material individual responsible for the scrapping of that unit together with Minister Machunu. It just smacks too much of a serious nature and a serious misdirection and abuse of power. That is where the problem in actual fact arises. And from what I'm actually seeing and from my own opinion, it's not helping him. He might have been a little bit better with regards to these answers today, but it's not helping him escape this cloud that he's got following him, especially with everything that's been going on and the investigation taking place and the search of his house. It's just all looking a little bit too hot for Sabia at this present moment. And I think that's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and they're going to continue to turn up the heat. And he's not going to be able to blame anybody else except for his own involvement with these individuals linked to organised crime.
Prof, do you find that there was a lot of or some amount of abuse of power and overreach on the end of Sibiya?
Look, Katleho, I think one thing we need to emphasize to the viewers is that, one, there was communication between the National Commissioner and the Office of the National Commissioner and the Office of General Sibiya. But it would appear that there was either miscommunication, whether deliberate or inadvertently, that's not the point. But the point of the matter is that the National Commissioner, in his submission, really directed in terms of how he wants, for example, the PKTT to be disbanded, the phased out position approach, even though we don't know what that phased out approach would have been. To me, it boils down to your boss says disband, but follow the sequencing of 1, 2, 5, 3, 1. And you decide to follow the sequencing of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know. So that is what the bone of contention really here is about. It's not that it's not that it's not so much that he acted um, in good faith, you know, because I'm saying that by not following the sequencing in relation to what the National Commissioner directed, that's where the problem is. And you know, did he abuse his authority? It's debatable, but was there insubordination? Certainly, the National Commissioner thinks that there was insubordination because a particular instruction um, was not followed. And those are the issues that are going to be threshed out. And this is the reason why he's suspended. And those are the issues that are going to be threshed out in that disciplinary hearing. You know, and a lot of things are still debatable, but there exists prima facie evidence on a balance of probability to say, you know, the commission, in fact, based on what other witnesses have said about General Sibiya and, you know, the evidence that has been led, there exists prima facie evidence for the commission to say, investigate further or prosecute. Ian is correct that General Sabia is under a dark cloud, and the only redemption for him is for the matters to go to the disciplinary hearing and to a court of law so that he can exonerate himself, because that is where the evidence is going to be tested beyond reasonable doubt. With the commission, the burden of proof is still very much on a balance of probabilities or preponderances. And so far, what is out there is sufficient to pursue criminally and pursue investigations and prosecutions.
All right, gentlemen, let's take a quick break. We are discussing the testimony that we saw today being led in evidence by the General Sibiya at the Madlanga Commission. You also can send us your comments on 072 110 5584 or give us a call on 010 594 6010 to tell us your thoughts this evening. We'll continue after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking on the testimony that was given by General Sibiya at the Madlanga Commission. Today we are joined by Unisa criminologist Professor Mpho Matlala and criminal law expert Allis. Now, Ian, in the discussions with General Sibiya, there was the main issue, that which has brought all of this together, and that's the disbandment of the PKTT. And he emphasizes that task teams are ordinarily established for a defined purpose, and this was the case, that the PKTT was only going to be in existence for a certain period of time. But he also goes on to mention that he's not surprised that Minister Mkhunu had disbanded or asked for the disbandment of the PKTT at the time in which it was, because he says there were previous meetings and consultative meetings where this was discussed.
Well, the first thing that we need to be mindful of, and that is that with the ongoing investigation into General Sabia, is he's also taking his lead from what his attorneys are also going to be advising him, and that is to be very cautious about how he goes ahead and answers it, especially from a self-incrimination point of view. Now, with what he's in actual fact saying is very correct in a theoretical sense. And I think that's what he's basically trying to focus on with regards to certain of his testimony, is the theory of it. But the reality is with that specific task force, it had a very specific, the purpose was very specific. It wasn't going to be something that was normally defined by a limited time period or just a limited number of matters. This was going to be something that was a long-term focus from the Department of Justice and the NPA, as well as from SAPS, to focus on and to try and, if one could go ahead and say, bring the termites, bring the ants out of hiding, and to actually flush out a lot of the people involved, which just by Mkhonazi's revelations has already started to happen, and we're finding names getting bandied around and dropped and all of that. Now, there's been all these morass of new cases that have come out. And I think most importantly, at the end of the day, is yes, it wasn't surprising, but I think it was not surprising more from the fact of what was being revealed and the extent of the rot, rather than the predefined purpose being met, and that the need for the task force had disappeared. It was disbanded for a very specific reason, and that reason was that they couldn't undercover more of the rot that was already starting to take place, and that was found.
And Prof, the argument of Sibiya is that in disbanding the PKTT, they wanted to establish something that's more extensive and that would be dedicated to murder and robbery. That would be the murder and robbery unit. How would you differentiate between what that unit would look like as opposed to the PKTT?
Look, the political task team was created specifically for political killings. And of course, now and then, as we may have seen with the Fort Hare case, then it is extended to other tasks, depending on the requests made and the need, the capacity needed to resolve certain crimes outside of politically motivated killings. In fact, when you look at the Fort Hare case, one can always argue that it is also political, because universities have their own politics. They may not be career politicians, but there's certainly in higher education institutions a lot of politics. But the difference between the PKTT and the murder and robbery is that the murder and robbery units would focus on all high-profile murders, including political killings, which would then stretch the focus of the unit, as opposed to what the PKTT used to do. And you have to understand that the PKTT was as such that it could harness multidisciplinary skills altogether, whether it's in forensics, whether it's the special task force guys, whether it's the national intervention unit and so forth. But if you are to apply the same multidisciplinary approach to now murder and robbery units, which are on the structure, I don't think the SAPS will have those kind of resources to give forensic experts and special task force members to every single murder and robbery unit in the country across all 9 provinces. So in a way, it would actually impact on the efficiency of the police in dealing with even those other serious matters that may not be politically motivated. That is the key difference between the two.
Ian, I mean, if we still continue just on the train of thought that Prof has raised with regards to the resources, in a perfect world where we would want a murder and robbery unit to exist throughout SAPS, what would then be the low-hanging fruit to something that would be quite close to that ideal?
If I could also just build on a little bit from what Prof was also going ahead and saying, and that is this aspect, the murder and robbery unit is today, this isn't a new phenomenon in South Africa. That is the stuff that is basically handled by SAPS on a day-to-day basis. And yet there are better and more specialized units within the SAPS. But they also need to investigate crime without fear or favor. And this is where I think the distinction is in actual fact coming with this, is that these are functions that are performed by SAPS. What you're basically now doing is these are very specific type of specialized instances with the political task force killing. Not that every murder and robbery and major serious crime isn't, but you're starting to get into a realm that's very murky. So now it's becoming absorbed into an already overstretched, overburdened police force. And that is where the problem comes. And that's why now you're suddenly starting to see the low-hanging fruits on there's no real low-hanging fruit, if one could go ahead and say, from this type of high-profile crime-related investigation. It's a deep entrenched syndicate and cartels that are operating within the framework of organized crime. So you're dealing with a very sophisticated structure. Now what you're going to do is you're going to absorb a specialist task force and task team into an already overburdened system.
Right.
So what's going to end up happening is that your lower hanging fruit, and that's where we're starting to see pardon the pun, the fruits of the labor now coming out, especially with regards to the arrests of Molefe, Matlala, and Browns Mahotsi being named as just a few. You're now going to start finding that it gets further and further away, and that perhaps low-hanging fruit becomes higher and higher and higher. You're not getting the low-hanging fruit, you're actually pushing it up further so that you can spend time looking at basically the day-to-day functions, which the specialist units should not be doing.
Most certainly. Well, we've got a caller on the line, Imran in Ekurhuleni. Very good evening to you. What did you make of today's testimony?
Hello?
Hi, Imran.
Yes, I'm here.
What are your thoughts today?
I'm not live.
Yes, you are, Imran. You're on the late edition. We are listening to what your thoughts were for this evening. If you could turn down your TV set as well, Imran, please.
Okay, hold on.
All right, we'll try and re-establish that line with Imran calling us from Ekurhuleni. Maybe let's just continue with this discussion for now as we try and get that caller back on the line. So one of the other issues that were raised, Prof, by Sibiya was that he claims that there's politically targeted interventions here when it comes to the charges against him. He says they are fabricated for his career as well as his reputation. What were your thoughts on that statement?
Look, he did make those claims or allegations rather, but allegations remain allegations, and one needs to have proof or evidence thereon. I seem to recall that he mentioned the time when General Mukhwanazi was sent to investigate him, and he went to the city of Joburg at the time. Mayor Colin Makhubela was the speaker,
Yes.
and then going to see another character whose name I've forgotten now. But we do remember even at the time that Herman Mashaba, as a DA mayor at the time, was singing praises of General Sibiya.
Right.
It is all there. It is circumstantial, but we can't connect the dots.
Prof, can you just
except
hold that thought? Apologies for interjecting there. We've got Imran back on the line, and I believe, Imran, a very good evening to you. I mean, Sabia told us in the commission today that a fraud case was opened against him in 2015, and this was from someone called Imran Bhatt, a Pakistani national who had investigated, or rather he had investigated, for alleged human trafficking. Is that you, Imran?
I am the same Imran, but
So are you aware of this case that was opened in 2015?
yes, definitely. I opened the case against General Sabia, and he's lying where he's saying he investigated me. It's other way around. It's myself and the DPCI head office. We investigated him, his involvement with the human trafficker and the counterfeit cigarette people. We have all the evidence, and I'm coming to commission very soon.
So maybe just give us a bit more background, Imran. When you say you investigated him, are you an authority of the police? How is it that you were investigating General Sibiya, particularly on these charges of human trafficking as well as counterfeit goods?
So basically what happened, I went ahead with a complaint. And then I was referred to General Sibiya while he was brigadier then in head office. And to attend my complaint, honestly speaking, he never attended, he never did anything, but we stay in touch. When he moved to Gauteng as a provincial head, I'm here. Then we start
Imran,
talking
we are
again.
losing you, Imran. Maybe if you could just start from the point where you said where he moved as head in Gauteng. If you could take it from there, please, because the line seems to be breaking up a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearer now.
So he moved, when he was moved to Gauteng as a provincial head, so we got in touch again, and I went and see him at his office. The man started storing money from me. Believe me, I have all the evidence. Every single payment I made to General, from 1,000 to 100,000 up to a couple of millions, he has extorted from me. I have every single evidence what he took from me. I end up open the case, and that's not the only a case. There is a case, attempted murder, kidnapping, and to assassinate me. He was paid by actual kingpin of the human trafficker to take me out. He came to my home while sitting in the car with the bogus police and the Ukaroleni Metro Police to kidnap me. God is my witness. I was survived that night because I called the local police. All the evidence are there. Unfortunately, when the regime changed, the new leadership came in with the SAPS and the DPCI, everything fall. I have recording of the SPPs begging me and police to not follow these cases. General Sabia is not the policeman. I am saying on the national TV, he's the biggest criminal and thug in this country. And I'm challenging him. I have all the evidence, and I'm coming to commission, and I will expose him with all the evidence.
So, Imran, you speak about paying anything from 1,000 to millions, you've said, to General Sabia. What were you paying for?
Protection fees, for no reason.
And
every time I go, and because my basically complaint was my life was under threat. So every time I go, he has an issue, he's broke, he wants 1,000 rand, he wants 5,000, he wants 10,000. I thought, man is busy assisting me. On the end, I realized he's actually extorting money from me, and when I realized he's busy with the same people which I complain about, they are his friends. And that's where the problem starts. That's where he started going after me. He's saying I'm a human smuggler, human trafficker. I am challenging him. He said he investigated me. He was the head of Hawks. What was the conclusion of the investigation? Why he didn't arrest me? He must bring it on. I am saying on national TV, I'm in the position of evidence where I will present very soon to have him arrested.
If you could just maybe clarify for us, Imran, I mean, you're saying here that you are going to be appearing before the Madlanga Commission.
I identified the commission today. My name is being mentioned, and I must be given the opportunity to come and present what I have. Because the human trafficker allegation is very serious.
It certainly is, Imran. And also in the start of our conversation, you were breaking up a bit. Did you mention the line of work that you are doing that led you to wanting to get protection from General Sabia?
Not at all. Not at all. I have nothing done wrong. I'm not involved with any illegal activities. I was reporting illegal activities to the right authority. Happened to Sibiya was the head of Hawks in Gauteng province. I thought he's looking into our complaint, not knowing he was extorting money through me to other people and from me. And on the end, when I found out the very same criminal who are involved in these illegal activities are his friends. And they are the one who were paying him. I'm saying that X5, I opened the case. I will bring it proof how he got it. That X5 was pounded with the counterfeit cigarette by his team, and then he took the car. He never bought it. But Indian men from the world. Then someone from Pakistani community who made a statement against the men got killed. I'm in the position of evidence. I have provided to the right people already the statement.
All right. Imran, thank you so much for calling through. These are, of course, not the views of Newzroom Afrika. This is a caller who was mentioned by General Sabia in the testimony today about a case that was opened against him in 2015. Imran alleging some of these activities. Let's bring in our experts with what we've just heard. I mean, let's first take a break, in fact, and just gather some of this information, and we'll be back with more responses from our panelists. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. We are still speaking about the testimony made by General Shadrack Sibiya at the Madlanga Commission today. That testimony took place a little earlier on. We are getting a few of your responses. Let's take a look at your WhatsApps. We've got Matlosana saying General Sibiya's testimony clearly evades the allegations leveled against him. He became rather defensive, using political statements and claiming a social media frenzy. That's Tsepo Dihan from Matlosana. Anonymous says, good evening, Katlego and the viewers at home. I think General Sibiya was just trying to shift the blame to others. He knows what is right or wrong. He was just wasting our time. As for him, it seems he cannot even see that he is embarrassing himself and his trustees. They never thought that the wheel will turn one day, as we are watching and listening to all their lies and wish to see this to an end. Then we have Tsepo from Shakehapeng saying that General Sibiya is not offering much to exonerate himself. He's working hard to tarnish the National Commissioner and the Mkhwanazi side. This makes it easy for Madlanga to call a typical King Solomon case. If I can't have it, then no one can have it. We are all guilty. And the very last one from Anonymous saying General Shadrack Sibiya is an exposed criminal speaking from a position of advantage. All right, let's continue our conversation with Unisa criminologist Professor Matlala, as well as criminal law expert Allis. So before the break, we had that surprise call from Imran, a Pakistani national. He was mentioned by Sibiya at the Madlanga Commission earlier on, and Sibiya said that a fraud case was opened against him in 2015 because of which they were investigating alleged human trafficking as well as counterfeit cigarettes. Prof, maybe let's just start with you. Those are very damning allegations that were made by Imran. He spoke about extortion fees that he had paid to General Sibiya. He also spoke about a kingpin that was tasked to kill Imran, and this kingpin was linked to General Sibiya.
Indeed shocking. That sent shivers down my spine. I think if you are talking about opening a can of worms, that is an underestimation. This is not a can of worms. This is an anaconda pit where anacondas congregate. You know, it's very, very scary to actually imagine that things like this would be, allegations like this would be leveled against a senior police officer such as General Sibiya. But what I take comfort in is that Imran is committing to come to the Madlanga Commission, and actually he did say he has evidence, and then he can bring that evidence to the Madlanga Commission, and hopefully the recommendation would be prosecution so that all that evidence can be tested in a court of law.
Ian, your thoughts on Imran's call? I mean, he spoke about a person getting killed. He spoke about counterfeit cigarettes that were confiscated, an X5, which was also later returned, and those counterfeit cigarettes seemingly not having made their way where they need to be. What did you make of that call from Imran Bat?
And unfortunately, as much as I wish I was surprised, I'm not particularly surprised that there's allegations of this nature. The fact remains that where there's smoke, there's fire. And this just adds a different layer onto what's already the festering rot that's taken place within the South African police force. This is not a new thing. This has unfortunately been ongoing for years. It was just the extent that people didn't really realize. And what has happened now is that it's just coming out more and more of the money that was involved, the close ties. In fact,
all right, we seem to be losing Ian's connection there as we're wrapping up this conversation. Ian, if maybe you could just finish your thought there. We lost you a bit at the tail end of your response. All right, while we try and fix that line with Ian, Prof, maybe just to wrap this up, I think one other issue then that is raised in this is that of the protection of whistleblowers. If Imran is saying that he is willing to go to the Madlanga Commission and testify, and we've seen in the past what has happened to a number of whistleblowers, to what extent do you think safety needs to be tightened up in order for us to get the alleged evidence that people such as Imran say they are in possession of?
Indeed, the Commission has got to ramp up the protection of whistleblowers. And perhaps the most prudent thing to do at this point in time is then to even take it away from the SAPS as a service provider in that regard, and perhaps maybe look into other state institutions like the state security and so forth. And perhaps what I always advocate is that perhaps the time has come for South Africa to move away from inquisitorial commissions and institute prosecutorial commissions that have the power to investigate and the power to prosecute, and their own wing in terms of protecting whistleblowers and their own safe houses. And perhaps even such commissions can become a permanent feature, whether you call it a Chapter 9 institution or something like that, but whatever the legislative machinations will be, we can leave that to the legislators.
Most certainly. Gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this evening. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insights. That was the Unisa criminologist, Professor Mpho Matlala, as well as criminal law expert Ian Allis. Right, that's how we wrap up this hour. We'll be back with headlines at the top of the next.